Hello and welcome to The Hindu. Hours after he was summoned to Delhi to meet Union Home Minister Amit Shah in Delhi, Manipur Chief Minister N. Biren Singh stepped down upon his arrival in Imphal. After arriving in a chartered flight, Mr. Singh went to the Raj Bhavan in Manipur and tendered his resignation. The big political development in the northeast state comes 21 months after ethnic violence erupted on May 3, 2023. More than 250 people have been killed and around 60,000 people have been displaced so far. Though the development took place on Sunday, there had been no clarity on the future course of action till Monday afternoon. While the option of a governor's rule is on the card, hefty political meetings are taking place in Imphal among the BJP leadership. To discuss more on this, I am joined by Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan, former Assam Rifles Director General, Dr. Mutum Yoiremba, independent political analyst, and John Simte, lawyer and researcher. Welcome all. Okay. Sir, I would like to come to you first. How do you see this big political development in Manipur, and what does it mean for the ongoing violence, which occurs in phases, and it has takes its own time to subdue? What is your take on this?
The issue is, Vijeta, firstly, good afternoon to you, and thank you for calling me to the show. Uh, it gives me an opportunity to explain the intricacies of Manipur, which I'm sure we've all known, we've all discussed, but maybe sometimes there's a problem. Political issues that happen based with uh, insurgency situations, and along with that, a whole lot of other issues that take place are intrinsic in this background since Manipur acceded to India in 1949. You're aware of that. We've had almost a continuing insurgency in Manipur from something like 1963-64. That's almost around the same time that the Naga insurgency was beginning since 1956-57. And the formation of the UNLF, the formation of the PLA, the formation of so many other mighty groups that took place. So all this is actually a continuum of that. Secondly, Manipur is a border state with Burma or Myanmar, as it's called now. And the tribes in Manipur are also similar to those in Burma or Myanmar. They're also similar to those in Arunachal. They're also similar to those in Nagaland and parts of them in South Assam, as well as the Kukis who are in Manipur are also related to the Chins in Myanmar and to the Mizos in Mizoram. So it makes for a very uh, different cauldron of issues. But the main issue is that whatever happens in Manipur today will affect what is happening in Nagaland, it will affect what's happening in Mizoram. And political issues tend to also do the same thing. What is happening with Mr. Biren Singh resigning will affect parts of Nagaland, will affect parts of Arunachal, will affect parts of Mizoram, will affect parts of South Assam. So the whole issue is interconnected. And this interconnection of tribes and interconnection of domestic problems connected with Myanmar is going to continuously create a problem for us. So we have to look at Mr. Biren resigning as the first step towards bringing some kind of normalcy into Manipur.
Okay. Dr. Mutum, do you agree with Lieutenant General Chauhan that this is the first step towards normalcy? Because since May 2021, no, sorry, not May 2021, since May 2023, more or less, Manipur has been under central rule. So what changes now?
I think the fact that the CM himself has come out with the resignation shows that he is willing to go with the pulse of the people. And I think it's clear if you read the resignation letter, there are certain terms which he had laid down in the resignation as well, in terms of what to do next, right? So, in terms of it being a positive step, uh, it is much awaited to see for the people because it is also who will come next. That is also a bigger question, not just about who has resigned. So, in terms of the political development, I would say it is a positive step towards peace and reconciliation because, in one sense, it is not a forced removal, but you can say it's a resignation by the CM himself. So, That itself there is no political conflict in terms of the resignation. It was a smooth process, so you can say that is a development as such.
Yeah, considering the fact that before he resigned, the Union Home Secretary convened a meeting with all the security forces, and he asked them to be on a standby and be available on a short notice so that if at all violence takes place, so that situation can be curtailed. Because in the past, we have seen that last year when he was about to resign, how his resignation letter was torn, and there were women and others who came out on the streets to protest against his resignation. So, what according to you has changed this time? Has he got uh, have people understood that this was inevitable, or he could not garner much support this time?
I think in terms of politics, you cannot really say in terms of black and white the answer. And so to answer your question, I think it would be safe to say that things are yet to be seen.
Things are yet to be okay. Okay, John, can I come to you? You have seen the development, and so what does it mean for the Cookizo community? I know that you don't represent the entire community, but as someone from that region, how it is being perceived there? His resignation.
Well, so to begin with, I think some statements from the civil society leadership there has welcomed this as an initial step, and it has in fact gone on to say that this is the beginning or this first step towards sort of uh, having a continuous dialogue with the other community that is involved in this conflict. But having said that, I think uh, to reduce the conflict into to what the chief minister represents would be a mistake, because if you look at the resignation letter that my co-panelists just mentioned, uh, and the terms that he is mentioned in the letter for the central government to take forward sort of sets the tone of what he expects to happen in the coming days. And I think at their core, those demands, at least some of them, have been a subject of or has been used as tools to vilify entire communities. For instance, the specific point on illegal migration, narco terrorism, and so on. So, while resigning from sort of the situation and from the post, he sought to set the terms of his resignation as well. So, I think that's a that's an important sort of uh, point that I feel that some analysts analysis are missing.
And how it is being
So,
perceived
like I
in the
said,
hills, if you have had a chance
to
to speak to
begin with,
people?
it is being welcomed as initiation for dialogue, because for many, he's the chief minister is seen as an Asian provocateur, and because of what he's done in the past, and because he's presided over this sort of collapse of governance, and this kind of uh, like I said, a vilification of the entire community in Manipur, especially since May 2023. But on a broader level, uh, there is a there is an understanding that at least that this is one step forward uh, to to coming back to coming back to a situation where people are talking to each other, and where, like General Shokin Chauhan said, that this is the start of a process where people engage in dialogue. So I think that is what the general sense that people are also communicating. So.
Right. General Chauhan, Biren Singh has mentioned about illegal infiltration, illegal movement of people from across the border, as well as he has mentioned the free movement regime in his resignation letter. Since you have headed the border guarding force, what do you think about his assessment? And do you think, because there are credible evidences to say that this illegal movement of people, armed people, have contributed to the ongoing violence in the state?
Uh, Vijayata, see, uh, as I said last time, there are the issues of border guarding is connected to the issue of inside the Manipur Valley and connected to the state in Myanmar and the states and the other states. Now, what happens is, let me explain to you. Moment the Chin National Army and the Chin National Front and the Arakan Army started their battle against the Tatmadaw, that's the Burmese or the Myanmar army. What happened? A number of refugees started coming into India. Chin refugees and different races, different tribal refugees started coming into India, but most were Chins because the Chin state borders the state of Manipur, borders the state of Mizoram, borders the state of these two states. They're the southern states. Now, when I was a DG Assam Rifles, there were already rumblings of this happening, and I went to the chief minister. He was Mr. Laltan Hawla at that time. And I told Mr. Laltan Hawla, I said, we've got to stop these refugees from coming in. You've got to stop giving them help because we don't know who all are coming in. We can't stop them. There is no border fence. Uh, the Assam Rifles is stretched too thin. We have only 20 battalions along the 1770 kilometers, and 25 battalions are fighting the insurgency inside. So I said, see, it's a difficult issue. And what he told me was, he said, General, the Chins are my brothers, and I cannot stop them from coming in and taking sanctuary with their own brothers inside Mizoram. He says, we are connected people. So there's no doubt, Vijayata, that the Chins have come inside India. Most of them are undocumented. They have almost 36 to 30, 36 to 40,000 Chins have taken refuge in Mizoram. And some of the chains have also taken refuge in Manipur, maybe 5,000 odd people. Out of this, we're not very sure how many of them are involved in the battles of the Kukis and the Maitis. We're not sure about that. So there have been illegal migration. They are because these are refugees also. We're not sure whether they come with weapons, whether they've not come with weapons, because the border is absolutely porous and the number of troops on the border is very, very little. So these are the issues that I wanted to explain to you, that unless we create a, a system by which all the states are on a similar uniform situation, it will be very difficult to stop people from coming in. But there have been people who've come in. There's no doubt about that. And though we're trying our best, the Assam Rifles trying its best to document the people, to get them into camps, to put them into situations, we find that, especially in Mizoram, there's a difficulty in identifying the refugee because, as I said, the Mizoram State Chief Minister had told me that they are our brothers, and I simply cannot stop them. So maybe unless we have much stronger forces, much more forces on the border, we have the fence, we have a controlled system, it might be very difficult for us to stop or to even document the number of illegal refugees who come into India.
Right. Since India is not a part of the UN Convention on Refugees, and we don't have a refugee policy as such, and last year, Home Minister Amit Shah announced that the free movement regime along Myanmar border is being scrapped. But in reality, it was not scrapped because what we saw in December last year, there were new guidelines by the Union Home Ministry where they were trying to streamline the movement of people because people have familial and ethnic ties across the border, and more gates are being planned, more checkpoints are being planned. Do you think all this is going to, in a way, regulate the movement of people and regulate the movement, illegal, say, movement of people, and contain the ongoing violence? Will it have an impact?
See, Vijeta, for this to be successful, the Tatmadaw, or the forces in Burma, that is the Burmese National Army, the Myanmar National Army, also has to help us. They also have to establish the same kind of border controls that we are planning to have. But if they have ceded their territory to the various insurgent forces that have camps, illegal camps in Myanmar, it may be difficult for us to prevent people from coming in. But today, using technology, using RFID cards, we are talking of a free move regime which is prevalent only in 16 kilometers across the border on both sides.
And now it has been reduced to 10 kilometers.
10 kilometers. So the villagers of these 10 kilometers have to be identified. They have to have RFIDs. They have to cross from particular border crossings, and only then can we control them. But if there is no Burmese government or no Burmese authority across on the other side, it might be impossible to stop. Because as I said, there are illegal camps that also exist, insurgent group camps that also exist across maybe 20, 30, 40 kilometers away. And if we can't stop those, and the Burmese army is not stopping those, then it might be very difficult to police the villages that are within 10 kilometers of our border. And politically, the chief minister of Mizoram might not be willing to do this. Politically, the chief minister of Nagaland might not be willing to do it. The reason is, if you go to Nagaland, which is now not in the news, the eastern Nagaland is dominated by the Konyaks. And Konyaks had their own insurgent group called the NSC and Kaplang, who was also himself a Konyak. This group is now in a ceasefire with us. And the ceasefire was signed when I was the chairman of the ceasefire monitoring group. But at that moment, too, when I asked General Kango, who was the head of the NSC and Kaplan group, why he was continuing to fight this insurgency, he said, I will continue to fight this insurgency till all my people are united. Now, the Konyaks are on both sides of the border. And we are not going to look at a change in the border between us and Myanmar. So, how do we reunite all the Konyaks? How do we reunite all the chains? So, this is an issue that we have to make the people of our country understand. We have to make our tribal leaders understand that unless they are on board with us, unless they give us their entire cooperation, no streamlining of this movement can be contained. Will a fence contain this? It might reduce it, but it won't contain it. More border crossings? Yes, but the border is porous and people can cross through any place. There are villages, Vijeta, in eastern Nagaland and in Manipur and in Mizoram where half the border crosses through a particular village. How do you stop that? So these are domestic issues interlinked with international issues that we have to take care of and maybe manage the problem.
But it has been
Sort these
successfully done.
insurgencies out.
Sorry to interrupt. It has been successfully done along Bangladesh border. Bangladesh border, it passes through drawing rooms of people. So, I
Correct.
mean,
So what we did there
even
was that we were able to exchange those conclaves. We were able to tell the Bangladesh people that look, the Bangladesh government that okay, this part is with you, this part is with us, and we changed the border. Can we do it with Myanmar? Can we include the villages that have been divided? So these are issues, Vijayata, we have to keep in mind. This insurgency, which is connected, which is what I'm trying to say, is that while the first step is a political step that Shri Biren Singh has resigned and it might come into governor's rule, all we get a system by which we start talking to each other. If I tell you that the first step was the resignation of Biren, the second step has to be the start of dialogue. As John said, it has to be the start of dialogue. You have to get the mighties and the cookies to start talking again. You have to get the youth leaders from sacrificing their generations, their future generations, into this pointless battle. And once we have everyone's okay, once the Chief Minister of Manipur, the Chief Minister of Mizoram, the Chief Minister of Nagaland, and the Chief Minister of Arunachal can sit together and decide that we are going to have peace in this area, peace is not going to come. And Myanmar itself is in such a turmoil that the refugees from Myanmar will come into us. Now we must have a proper policy. And for this, the Chief Minister of Mizoram and Manipur have to be in consonance with us. Every time a refugee comes, he is documented and put into a refugee camp. Right? And then from there returned when the situation improves. But these are the problems, Vijayata, that we will continue to face. Having studied the Northeast, having lived in the Northeast, having commanded the force, I can tell you that the first steps are important. We have to stop the battle in Manipur. We have to demobilize the insurgent groups. We have to get the weapons back. We have to redraw our system by which we ensure that this doesn't happen again. But the most important thing is we have to get everyone on board.
Right. Dr. Mutum, I would like to come to you now. Uh, since this violence began, there have been several reports of abductions, extortions, which have skyrocketed in the valley as well as in the hill areas. I would like to ask you about the valley area. How are people coping with it? How is the economy? What is the impact of this on the lives of common people?
Vijeta, before I get to that, shortly I would like to sort of say a commentary about talking to each other, if I may, right? So, in terms of talking to each other, I think at a very personal level, the Meiteis and the Kukis also have been friends or, extended families, they are still talking to each other. So, it's not at the level of the personal that is a problem, but at the level of the political. So, in one sense, you have conceptualized the other community as some sort of an enemy, right? So in that sense, we are not in talking terms in terms of the community level, but it is not in terms of the foe. You do not necessarily see someone as a foe, right? So I think there has to be some distinction in terms of the not
Right.
talking there. So what we need to be doing is in terms of talking in the public platform. But the question is
Right.
the political environment, is the social environment, is the current situation ready for that political talk, right? Right. And then to answer the question, how are people coping up with the situation in Imphal? Uh, it would be safe to say that things seem to be normalized in one sense in terms of the law and order situation. So if you stay in, for example, for the last, let's say, 2, 3 decades, insurgency, as the Lieutenant General has rightly pointed out, has been a part and parcel of the society and the social fabric. So that has been, in one sense, to live in a militarized society, there's some sort of resilience that you develop towards it. And so, continuing 21 months of violence, which different angles of the society may blame different people. One may blame the CM, one may blame the center, one may blame the other community. But the fact is that people have some sort of gotten used to it, and that has been a part of the mundane now. And in terms of what we can see in the law and order situation, I think one thing is to solve the insurgency problem, but we should also make a distinction between the armed youth volunteer on both sides for that matter, whether it's Kuki or the Meiteis, people who are insurgents and people who are not insurgent but who has been forced to take up guns, and how are you going to rehabilitate people who are not insurgents but who have taken up guns? So I think that would be a greater question to be asked maybe to the department of the
But there are several credible reports that there are certain radical armed groups which have come up only in the past 2 or 3 years, and they are also indulging in extortion and committing crimes, various crimes. There was an instance when the police had to lay down arms because they were so pressurized by this group called Arambai Tengol. So, do you see in foreseeable future whether the support for this group it has it, it comes from the society, after Biren Singh's resignation, will it go down the support for these groups, or will it grow? How do you see this?
I do not necessarily see a connection between the two, right? I mean, that is for people or the onlookers to decide. But I can certainly say that there has to be something at the policy level, right? And it cannot be a military policy like the way you deal with an insurgent and the way you deal with people who are there living in open daylight, right? There's a huge difference between this. How are you going to deal with it at a policy level? Are you going to do some sort of rehabilitation program? Are you going to give an honorary exit? How are you going to deal with it? So I think there's a larger policy question here where how are you going to separate the insurgents from people who are not insurgents, who have necessarily taken arms or have been part of the village volunteer group. And I'm talking necessarily of both groups. So how are we going to do that? I think that is the main question in terms of reconciliation.
Right. John, I would like to repeat the same question to you. There are insurgent groups in the hills also, and recently we saw a video where young people were playing football with arms and weapons. So, what is the sense among the community? Is there an acceptance for such kind of a conduct, or there is a willingness to give up arms to give peace a chance?
Well, let's just go back to how we reached this place, right? We reached this place because uh, of the kind of flames that were being lit from May 3rd onwards, right? And which has eventually led to sort of both a weaponization of society on both ends. And now the key challenge that a lot of security officials have also stated is to how to disarm uh, sort of groups on both sides. And that being the key challenge, and as you mentioned, there was a video that came out, and I don't think there is an acceptance of that kind of behavior. But at the end of the day, why these groups exist and why do they continue to exist is because they're seen as protectors of one community's interests, right? And why do I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm saying that why do people look at them in that way? Because the state and its monopoly over violence and how it's supposed to enforce law and order and control in the state has sort of evaporated. The state, for all intent and purposes, uh, has ceased to exist in enforcing law and order in state. And this we saw through the multiple incidents over the last 2 years, right? The most gruesome assault of citizens, women, children, and so on happened under the watch of the state. So the reason why these groups exist and why they are celebrated is because the state has evaporated. So, and for the society and the state to sort of come back on its own legs, there is a need to enforce law and order. And the only way that can happen is if there is a concerted effort to disarm a highly weaponized society that we're looking at this stage.
Right. Let me come back to the question around the situation, the circumstances under which Mr. Biren Singh resigned. One of the reasons being attributed is an ongoing case in the Supreme Court where the Cookie Human Organization, if I'm sorry if I'm mistaken with the name. They moved Supreme Court, and they mentioned some audio tapes which has been finally been sent to the Central Forensic Science Laboratory for checking its veracity. Do you think that also contributed to his stepping down?
Um, I think it. I think on a at a very surface level understanding of how it came into being, I would agree that it put a certain amount of pressure on the chief minister and also and his political party because to for a court to pass a potential stricture in the future, or say, for example, hypothetically, if it sort of launches or it constitutes as an SIT, as was asked by the petitioner, to look into what the utterances made in those tapes. Now, but having said that, it would be, and this is based on my understanding of how sort of mass crimes in India have been prosecuted, it would be politically naive to sort of, and also rather glib to sort of make that jump to that conclusion that this had a huge role to play in his resignation. Because as we know, in the last 76 years of our republic, very rarely have politicians been who have been charged or accused of presiding over instances of violence, especially mass violence. Uh, there has been no outcome or any concerted outcome that has arisen in that has led to conviction of anyone. So it would be rather, I think, glib to say that it had a huge impact. But of course, uh, many small things contribute and add to the weakening of the seat of power. I would put it like that.
Right. General Chauhan, both Mutum and John, they spoke about weaponization among the civil society. So, do you think the state administration totally collapsed and it could not check this the number of weapons that have landed in the hands of civilians? We don't see this anywhere else in the country.
You know, Vijayata, unfortunately, there might have been some kind of link between some people of the government with some of these insurgent groups. Uh, so when that happens, and when I have fought in Kashmir. I fought when it was 1989, 1990, 91, when the situation in Kashmir was going bad. There was elements of the J&K state government that were involved in the fanning of or in the raising of the JKLF, which had started this insurgency at that time, which then, of course, got finished and a more radical group like the Hizbul Mujahideen came into existence. Similar situations might have happened in Manipur, where the state or parts of the state were involved in the arming of certain groups. But like I said, and I agree with John, that when you talk to the insurgents, as I have to the Naga groups during the time when I was the chairman of the ceasefire monitoring group, I realized that society, the civil society or the tribal societies, see the armed cadre of these groups as protectors. And because they're treated as protectors, they're actually, the villages sponsor them to join their particular groups. So when that happens, and you have no mass recrimination within the society that you live in, it might be very difficult for you to stop this. So from the first step, I will again request these two young men, because they seem to be leaders of their communities, that please do not sacrifice the future of your youth. Come together, only you can change. Only they can bring about this peace by talking to each other, by accepting this, by demobilizing their own people. It is, the process, and I've been in the UN also, is a process called the DDR, the disarming, the demobilization, and the rehabilitation. All these three steps, Vijayata, must take place, not just in Manipur, but in all the northeastern states where insurgency exists. We must get them all together to understand that weaponizing the society means sacrificing the future of your children and the children's children. And unless that happens, and unless the society stops making these armed cadre their protectors, this is not going to change. And I've spoken across the land with very erudite, wonderful leaders of this insurgency. But the eventual situation is that we will continue to fight the state. As I said, Khango told me, General Khango, self-styled General Congo of the NSCNK, that I will continue this insurgency till my people are unified. That's not going to happen. How long are we going to continue to fight? So somewhere along the line, we ourselves have to stop this. You mentioned narcotics, you mentioned situations. Yes, these are major issues there. Narcotics are coming in, illegal arms are coming in, smuggling is going on. That place is a place where there is no law and order. But that's not just in our northeast, because our northeast is still very tightly held. Across the border into Myanmar, there is absolutely no authority. So if there is no authority, how will you stop those people from existing there? So these are issues that we must understand. Firstly, the linkages, the intertribal linkages, the idea that a particular tribe sees an illegal armed cadre as its protector is a very major issue. And this rechange of rethinking that anyone who takes arms against your state is an enemy. He is not your friend. He is not your protector. And the third issue, which I agree with John, is that the state should be seen as an impartial protector of all tribes. And somewhere along that, maybe we lost that plot. But I would really request John and the other, similar student leaders that please take into account that you belong to a country like India. We cannot have independent private armies. We cannot have insurgent groups that are armed to their teeth. Because building capability is one thing, Vijata. Changing the intent is one thing. Intent can change anytime, but once you build that capability of weapons, changing the intent depends on one leader, and you can restart a complete insurgency. So we need to rethink. We need to relook at these issues. And till such time we relook at these issues, it will be very difficult for only the Assam Rifles or the army to continually try and, you know, change the minds of people. Eventually, the tribe have to deal with these issues on their own. They must have their own groups. They must have their own people sitting together and saying, "Look, stop this violence. Get together. Let's get rid of all armed cadre. Let's get rid of all the weapons. And let's look at education and join in the future of a country like India, which is actually the only stable country in this entire South Asia. We're the only stable country. So this is important for all of us to understand how we must do these issues.
Right. Dr. Mutum, I asked this question to John earlier, but what, according to you, could have led to Mr. Biren Singh's removal? Was it only the Supreme Court case or political compulsions? Because increasingly it is being said that he was being sidelined among his own party. He was losing supporters in his own party. What is your assessment?
I mean, in terms of politics, everything else is a speculation. But what you see in black and white is what it is. And according to what it is his resignation, right? So you can take it in a sense that he decided to resign. So that would be the fact for now. But everything else is a speculation for right now, right? So I mean, stories may
Right.
later on, but for now, we can safely say it's a resignation, and as such, we should not go
No,
into
but
negotiate.
right, because the demands have been going on for more than 20 months now, since the violence broke, and there have been several instances when he almost resigned and then he didn't resign. There were rumors like kept floating, but this time it happened. So, how it is being received?
And very very smooth way. So you have to take that into account as well, right?
Okay. And you think this will further lead to a political dialogue between the two communities?
I mean, whether the two community have political dialogue or not does not entirely depend on just the state government per se, right? There are other factors involved. So, for example, the central government is one key player, which both the communities and also the state government has been always looking into and looking upward onto, so that they can have a dialogue. So I already mentioned earlier before that in the level of the personal spaces, there is still dialogues going on, but what about the political dialogue in terms of the public, right? So in terms of the public space, I think the intervention has to be the central government. So I think the ball is now in the central government's court.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, earlier also the security deployment, everything was being decided by center only. This security advisor, though he was appointed by the Manipur government, but he was recommended by the center. So I don't know what really changes on the ground. And with a new governor coming in, maybe we can see some more stringent security actions being taken in the future. Do you agree with me?
I would also want to repeat that in terms of when we look at law and order, right? And there's certain order in society. There's an order of things, and then law comes in. Law only comes in to preserve the order of the society, right? So therefore, it's called law and order, not just law, right? So in terms of the order of things has been hayward and up and down. And, it's been like there has not been order in the society. That is what many sections of uh, the community from both sides have been arguing, or the central government or the onlookers have been looking. So, are we going to restore that order, and what is that order going to be? I think that is to be seen. So, in terms of the presence of the law and order, I would also want to put one argument here that you said that the state should be an impartial onlooker and then enforce the law and order, but is it also that when you try to enforce law and order in the remote hills, that the problem arises? Is it that when law comes, that the order of things changes and therefore the problem arises? So now then, what I would like to say is, in terms of the policy that we have, in terms of the policy that we have of the Northeast, in terms of the policy that we have of Manipur, in terms of the policy that we have with the friendly neighbor Burma, do we need to have a different change, different attitude, different perspective to have a different kind of an order in which law can take its own way, right?
Right, right. John, you've been tracking the Supreme Court SIT, which and the Hindu did a story that only 6% cases, in only 6% cases, charge sheets have been filed. So this abysmal judicial proceedings and the sense of justice, where does it lie? Because those who committed crimes, they have not been punished yet. There has not been a single conviction in my knowledge. Do you think this also impacts the ongoing political process in Manipur? Which this also impacts the dialogue between the two communities, because everybody wants justice at the end of the day.
Right. Yes, I would agree with the fact that it has significant bearing on the political process in Manipur because, like you said, justice is a very key constitutive element of what both communities have asked for. And the families for the longest time. For instance, I know for a fact that the two women who were paraded naked, and when the video came out and so on, the two women and their families are still yearning for justice, uh, despite the fact that the Supreme Court had taken suo moto cognizance, and made and it became this huge thing where the Supreme Court took suo moto cognizance, and there were a couple of hearings after that. Some directions were issued, but after that, there's been no progress at all. And like I wrote in the Hindu, I think a few weeks back, that those cases that have been taken up by the SIT is stuck at the point where the Supreme Court has to issue directions saying that the trial can begin. And that is all the Supreme Court is left to do, especially in the cases where the charge sheets have been filed. Now, for its own reasons, Supreme Court has not listed the matter. It's not hearing the matter, so naturally the directions cannot be issued. So, I mean, so to give a sense of closure, to the families of the victims, I think it's critical that there is progress and movement on those SIT cases. And but from all by all accounts, I understand that there's been the investigating agencies themselves have faced significant difficulties in conducting investigation because they can't go from one side to the other and so on. So I think you know even that process and that system needs an overhaul entirely, and all the Union Home Ministry, the state government needs to realign their focus back on those specific cases.
Right, yeah. General Chauhan, uh, talking about tardy investigations, there has been no progress whatsoever in the gruesome killing of children and women in Jiribam last year. Six of them were killed and dumped in rivers, but there has been no arrest. By the case was handed over to the National Investigation Agency, but yet we see no development. So, how do you see people's trust coming back in such a scenario?
It's impossible for me to actually tell you exactly what might have happened and why there's a problem. But like I said when I was saying last time, it's important for the state to be the fair arbiter of all disputes. And if the state is not the fair arbiter, then you will have tribals raising their own armies and their own protectors. So I'm not sure why this hasn't happened. I'm not sure what happened. I'm not sure what the problem. But the state has to be fair in all its dealings, and every situation must be checked with extreme fairness and correctly, so that people don't lose faith in the systems of the state.
Thank you for joining the conversation. And for more such videos, please click on www.thehindu.com. Thanks for watching.